And this is Ken Kraetzer for Sons of the American Legion Radio and the West Point Football Report. My colleague John Chuhran and Jack McGuirk will be doing a talk about Army football and the game that they won on Saturday, Michie Stadium over Buffalo, and their big road trip that they head out to Columbus, Ohio, to play Ohio State on Saturday afternoon in front of what is expected to be over 100,000 fans. Big stage, as they call it, so it's going to be interesting. John Chuhran, how are you?
Quite well, and quite pleased that Army was able to mount a very strong fourth quarter comeback against Buffalo. This was in direct contrast to last year when they managed to run out of gas last year, and they lost that game, and a game they definitely should have won. This was sweet revenge, and I think everybody there knew it.
Yeah, last year up in Buffalo, Army had a strong lead in the game, and then Buffalo got a second win in the fourth quarter, and Army missed a field goal, but then Buffalo kicked one and won that game. So Army on this one went ahead after a UB field goal. Ahmad Bradshaw ran a 1-yard touchdown after he had run 50, I think it was 52 yards down the left side. He got a big hole, and he just was about 10 yards short of the goal, but he really showed his real sharp speed at cutting to the left side especially.
He absolutely did, and then unfortunately for Army, the rest of the half belonged to Buffalo. Buffalo managed to get 2 touchdowns, and they did one of the things that they do not like to do. One of the things that Coach Monken always preaches: don't give up the big play. They had 2 big plays. Both were scoring strikes. The first one was a 75-yard run by quarterback Tyrese Jackson, and then later on, late in the second quarter, you had the 48-yard scoring strike that Jackson threw to Antonio Nunn. Both of those were brilliantly executed and single plays that really seemed to really put the game out of touch for Army. At that point, the score was 17-7 going into the half, and it didn't look good at that stage, Ken.
Yeah, it really took a big effort by Army and really by the defense to get the ball back. Buffalo was driving in the third quarter and had the ball down to the Army 15-yard line, first and 10. And then after a 1-yard run, Alex Ackerman stopped Tyree Jackson for a 2-yard loss. And then on the next play, on 3rd and 11, there was a sack of 8 yards by Jalen McClinton, who caused a fumble, which was picked up by Andrew McLean. And so that got the ball back to Army and stopped that scoring drive when Buffalo was looking to really put the game out of reach. But then Army got the ball back and just marched down the field. And after it looked like Kel Walker had scored on a 6-yard run, it was called back. It was on the sideline, and then Darrell Woolfolk scored on a 1-yard run to get Army back to 17-14, and then defense got the ball back for Army again, and the Black Knights marched down the field, and Darnell Woolfolk again was able to convert the scoring play. The Army defense held, actually got the ball back for the offense, who did a fake punt in order to keep possession at the end of the game and avoid giving Buffalo another shot at scoring. And so that was their final, 21-17. Again, a good effort by the defense after they got past those 2 long plays they gave up in the first quarter. And then a good day, really, in the second half when Army conducted 2 signature drives of 79 and 66 yards, primarily just rushing the ball. They only threw the ball, I think it was twice on the game, John, and 2 for 8. And so it's amazing. Army's won 2 games, and they have a total of 17 yards passing. But in this one, they had 330 yards rushing, which is a good day. Not great by their centers. They had over 500 against Fordham. And but Buffalo was held to 312 total yards of offense by the defense. A lot of that coming in the 2 big plays in the first half. And so really this was a game that the defense got Army back in the game, and then the offense went back into full acceleration and scored 2 touchdowns when they needed.
Well, I think that 2 things stand out to me. One, we're seeing the emergence of 2 very, very good defensive players for Army. Jalen McClinton, you mentioned he had the sack that caused the fumble. Well, last week he had an interception in the game against Fordham. And we also mentioned Andrew McLean, who really hadn't been mentioned much in the way of, starring role for 2017. Well, last week he was the guy who blocked the field goal, and this week he was the guy who recovered the fumble. So you've got a real good situation with 2 players that I don't think anybody really out of the box expected them to be dominant.
Well, they've been playmakers. Andrew McLean playing out of his defensive line position. As you said, John, has been able to make big plays at key moments. And Jalen McClinton, we talked to in the post game, and he's emerging as another key player in the Black Knights' defensive backfield. An area there had been some concern about with Marcus Hyatt not being available this year, that there was going to be a lack of depth at cornerback, but some players are stepping up and really projecting the defense. It was interesting to talk to Coach Munkin at the Tuesday press conference. I kind of asked him how Ryan England was doing because he's the one senior in the backfield with a lot of younger players in front of him. And I said, who's really taken a leadership role is Scott Washley, the inside linebacker, calling the plays, making plays. So Army's got some leadership. I mean, in the past, if there was an injury or a player dropped out, there was really a lack of depth. But that's one of the things Coach Munkin has brought to this program, and his assistant coaches who have been literally recruiting the country for players that want to go to West Point, can make it into West Point academically, and can contribute to the team. This team has got depth on both sides of the ball, which we didn't see in 4 or 5 years ago with Army football.
That's absolutely right, Ken. And unfortunately, every week is a new game. Every week is a new battle. And this week's battle is coming up at Ohio State, and that's going to be a very, very difficult challenge for them. Coach Urban Meyer is 6 seasons there. His team consistently is ranked in the top 5. Right now, we're going into foreign territory, and it's going to be very difficult because Ohio State is coming off a very rare home loss, 31-16 to Oklahoma, and that knocked them out of second place in the polls. And this is a team that's going to be very, very motivated to do well because they know that they have their back against the wall. They have to do something really spectacular, basically run the table the rest of the season, rather, if they anticipate or hope to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, so that's what everybody's been kind of saying, that it's going to be a rebound week for Ohio State. They may try to put a lot of points on the board to kind of look like they're coming back strong off of last week's very, for them, disappointing effort against a very good Oklahoma team, which Army will see next year. The Army's going to be going out to Oklahoma to play, but their quarterback JT Barrett, we've watched play, a senior, and some very good running backs, and they can run the ball, throw the ball. So that's going to be the thing that's going to be challenging, is seeing how the Army defense can stop the Ohio State passing game. I think they'll be able to hold their own on stopping the run. On the other side of the ball, it's going to be interesting because Ohio State's going to be looking at the Army offense, which runs 95% of the time, they're going to be tempted to cheat and bring their cornerbacks up and maybe keep one safety back. So it's going to be a real challenge. What do you think? How can Army stay close in this game, John?
I have no clue. I mean, my gut tells me that this is a survival battle rather than a battle for victory for Army, because the reality is that the defensive line for Ohio State is big, it's strong, but the biggest thing about them is they're fast. These guys can be as fast as Army's running backs, and that's going to be awful difficult for Army to try to stop because they have more mass on the line, they have great speed, and it's going to be very, very difficult. Army's greatest opportunity, I think, is just going to be to try to grind the ball out, to try to do what they did in the second half against Buffalo, and try to use the clock, chew up the clock, use up time, because the more time they chew up, I think, is going to be more opportunity for them to keep the ball out of Ohio State's hands, and that's what's necessary. I don't think it's a matter of winning. I think it's a matter of minimizing the point deficit. I really do.
Well, in talking to Coach Monken at a Tuesday press conference, he talked about, representing the U.S. Army, representing the U.S. Military Academy. They're going out on the big stage. This is a game that was scheduled a long time ago. It was probably scheduled 8 or 10 years ago. And so nobody knew what the fortunes of either school would be at the time. Ohio State, since Urban Meyer has come in, has really been very strong, as we all know. And Army, under Coach Monken, has really improved its game. Witnessed a win over Navy last year. So it's going to be interesting. As you said, the key is for the Army offense to control the ball wherever they can, try to get longer drives, and try to keep the ball away from Ohio State, because I think it's going to be tough on defense. Ohio State, their whole offensive line is 310 pounds. I think every player, there's one player is 305. And they're experienced, and they know how to run block, that's for sure. And they also pass block well. Army, is going to be facing, you were talking about those two defensive tackles. I think everybody's going to be looking at Tracy Sprinkle, who number 93 is 6'3", 293, and then Jermont Jones, who is 6'3", 295 at the other defensive tackle. Usually you don't see that. They're playing a 4-3. Most of the time you see a nose guard, and you may have a big nose guard, but then the defensive ends aren't as big. Ohio State's got two tackles, as we said, all 295. Both are 295, and their defensive ends are 265. So that's a lot to run stop with. And as I said, Army's got to show some pass so they can keep the safeties from plugging the holes right away and keep the cornerbacks from cheating too far up.
And I think that Ohio State is really going to challenge Army and say, go ahead, try to make a pass, try to complete it. We will work on the premise that you are not going to be successful there, and we're going to continue that way until you prove us otherwise. So that really puts a lot of burden on Bradshaw to deliver in terms of being able to make some successful passes out there.
Yeah, in some cases, Coach Monken has used one of his alternate quarterbacks in passing situations, Luke Langdon. He's got Kelvin Hopkins. Two very good young players who will compete next year for the starting job when Ahmad Bradshaw has graduated. So we'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if if Coach Monken tried something like that. He's done that in games in the past, so we'll see. But Army's got to show that they can run the ball, and we'll see. It should be interesting. I'm looking forward to, I have to admit, I'm looking forward to seeing the Ohio Marching Band do the Ohio script with the dot the I. I've seen that on television so many times. I guess, one thing for Coach Monken, I'm sure he's going to get the team out there for a walkthrough on Friday afternoon so that the players can get a feel of looking around the place, looking at the big stadium, getting a feel for it, getting over all that. They played at the Cotton Bowl last year, which is an 85,000, 90,000 seat stadium.
But they didn't fill it. And the reality is that there will be over 100,000 people at Ohio State on Saturday. Game is going to be on Fox beginning at 4 o'clock, so you can watch it locally on Channel 5, nationally on the Fox network. But it's going to be a madhouse because from everything that we've read about the Ohio State promotions for this game, they are emphasizing this being a game for America, basically a game to promote Americanism, patriotism, supporting our military. They're looking at this as a chance to support the United States.
Well, yeah, a lot of times when Army goes on the road, it tends to become a military appreciation day. And actually, the players have mixed feelings. They just want to play football. So but it's really great to see the respect for the military at colleges across the country when Army comes in. And I know Ohio State has a very big ROTC program, and I understand already that they're going to be there. And also they had a note on their website saying that any Ohio State former players who had served in the military or any alumni, they wanted to know about it so that they could recognize them. So it'll be a neat atmosphere. Big time college football. It doesn't get any bigger. There's only a few places like this: Michigan, Tennessee. Maybe the Memorial Stadium in Los Angeles that are this big. Texas Stadium is big like this now that's been, enlarged. But we'll see. It's going to be interesting. They call it the Horseshoe, and then they added about 20,000 more seats to it 10 years ago. So looking forward to it. So any more thoughts on the experience at Ohio State for Army?
One of the things I think is going to be interesting will be the attitude of head coach Urban Meyer of Ohio State. He for 6 seasons he's led the Buckeyes. He's 62-7. His worst season is 11-2 there, but he's a man of tremendous respect. Everybody in the game, I think, respects the way he runs his team, coaches his team. I don't think he will let his team get out of hand. I think he's going to keep this under control. I don't think he's out to embarrass anybody. I think he wants to make sure that everybody knows that his team is very good. But at the same time, I don't think he wants in any way, shape, or form to try to embarrass Army.
Well, I'll tell you, knowing Coach Monken, he wants to win. He's going out there to win. He and his coaches, I'm sure, spent a lot of time in the offseason saying, what could we do to be successful at Ohio State? And, I'm sure they looked at it this week. The players watched the Oklahoma game and said, Ohio State's mortal. Oklahoma's beating them on pass plays and scoring. So it made the players had to give the players just a little bit of encouragement that they can play with Ohio State. Now maybe it's wishful thinking, but
I think it is, and I think the reality is when you just talked about the size of the Ohio State team. They've got size, they've got weight, and they've got speed. These are three things in every single category they have more than Army. Army's one opportunity that I see is that they have determination and they have a tremendous ability to be consistently strong throughout if they stay focused. They have mental toughness, this team does. And after last week, you have to wonder whether or not Ohio State is going to have a difficult season. Was that the sign of the times, the loss to Oklahoma? Or will Meyer be able to unify and get his group back? If he does, it's going to be a very long afternoon for the black and the gold.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the reasons Jeff Monken is at Army is the win he generated for Georgia Southern at Florida. And you could say that was a down Florida team. They caught them at a low ebb. But they still went in, played in front of 75,000 people, Georgia Southern, and pulled off a notable victory. And Coach Monken plays to win. And as he said in the press conference, if they're not going out there to win, well, why don't they just start preparing for Tulane?
Oh, I don't think it's a matter of not going out trying to win, but you also have to look at the maturity level of what's going on at Ohio State. The reality is their quarterback, J.T. Barrett, is a fifth-year player. I mean, he was a redshirt early on, and so this is his fifth year. He's actually physically graduated from the school and is there in the graduate program. So, I mean, the fact is this is a very mature quarterback who runs and throws and is clearly the leader of their team. It's going to be very, very difficult to get this guy rattled.
Absolutely. Now, I just want to thank our sponsors, the Westchester Bank, all the folks at the organization, Westchester Bank, and with branches all through Westchester. If you are a veteran, just call their main number and ask to speak to the CEO and John Tolmer, and he would love to take care of you personally with your banking needs. And then also the Westchester Family Chiropractic, 550 Mamaroneck Avenue, Dr. And it's Ken Kraetzer back with the West Point Football Report here at our home post 135 in downtown White Plains, New York. I really appreciate everybody's support here. Pete DeMarco, our commander, our Squadron 135, and our sponsors, the Westchester Bank, branches all through Westchester County. And just call their CEO if you're a veteran, and the CEO, John Tolmer, would like to take care of you personally. Now, we have our friend Jack McGuirk in to tell us a little bit about how Navy, Air Force, and the Maritime College have been doing.
Well, Air Force had their bye week. They're going to be taking on Michigan at Ann Arbor, Michigan this weekend. So that's going to be a tough game for them. Navy, on the other hand, they improved to 2-0 this weekend with a 23-21 win over Tulane. Navy quarterback Zach Abey rushed for 108 yards and 29 carries. He also threw for 132 yards on 12 passes, including a 79-yard touchdown pass to senior wide receiver Tyler Carmona. Now, Tulane quarterback Jonathan Banks left the game with an undisclosed injury after taking a hard hit in the second quarter. This weekend, actually, Tulane's taking on Oklahoma, and it's uncertain whether or not he'll be available for the game. With a minute 58 left in the game, Navy had the ball, and after too many men on the field penalty against Tulane, it was 4th and 1 with Navy, and Zach Abey rushed on a successful conversion, and Navy ran out the clock to seal the win. They're actually heading into their bye week, and they will host Cincinnati next weekend on September 23rd. That same day, September 23rd, Tulane's going to be hosting Army. So we should keep an eye on that game.
Well, it's interesting that Tulane's going to go out and play Oklahoma because that's a really tough game for anybody, and Army's going to have that game next year. But that's going to be a real challenge, and then Army's going to go down there to New Orleans. So it's going to be interesting to see both. Army's got a tough game this week, as does Tulane, so we'll see how they both set next week.
Absolutely. Now, SUNY Maritime had a nice win over the weekend against Mass Maritime at the Chowder Bowl up Cape Cod, 37-32. The Privateers' record against Mass Maritime is now 7-3. With the win, it was a record-setting game for the Privateers. Quarterback Thomas Wright, you met him at the other game. He threw 32 passes for 342 yards, including an 8-yard touchdown pass to Brandon Drumgoll with 40 seconds left in the first half. Wright's 342 yards through the air is a new single-game record for the Privateers, as is his 32 completions, which is 10 more than the previous record. He also rushed for 30 yards and had 2 rushing touchdowns. Drumgoll caught 13 passes for 151 yards and is the first Privateer with over 10 catches in a game. Senior Chris Oberling rushed for 73 yards and 17 carries. Senior Matt Murphy was 3 for 3 on field goal attempts and 4 for 4 on extra point attempts as well. And you met Thomas Wright and Matt Murphy at the game you attended. So a nice win for SUNY Maritime at the Chowder Bowl.
Yeah, this is looking to be a very strong Maritime College team. We talked with their coach, Clayton Kendrick Holmes, this morning. You can go to our Facebook page, Sons of the American Legion Radio. We'll have that interview posted for you there. And so they have another one of their maritime rivals that they play. They go over to Kings Point on Saturday and the Merchant Marine Academy. And that's a big rivalry for them both. We were talking with the coach a little bit about the differences of the two schools, and basically a Maritime College in Throgs Neck is a State University of New York school, whereas Kings Point is a federal school. They take appointments from across the country, and it's on a scholarship basis. So it's going to be an interesting game there. And so we are going to be at Ohio Stadium on Saturday. Follow right here on the West Point Football Report. Also on Twitter at Sons Legion Radio. Some of our video will be on YouTube. Just go to my YouTube page, Ken Kraetzer. And just like to take a second to thank our sponsors. They'll be helping us go out to Ohio State on, actually I'm heading out starting tomorrow night. We're going to stop at the Pittsburgh Steelers training camp and talk with Alejandro Villanueva, who is a graduate of West Point, class of 2010. John and I saw him play in the 2009 Army-Navy game, and after 3 tours overseas, he was able to make the NFL and is now the starting left tackle, number 78 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So we're going to visit, then head out to Ohio Stadium. So watch during the day on Saturday for more features, the pregame, and as I said, looking forward to seeing that Ohio band. It's probably about 300 people, and so it should be quite an experience, as John was saying. Last week, they had 109,000 people at the game. So I don't think, they had 90,000 at their spring game at Ohio State this past year. So it's a tough ticket. Everyone wants to go see, and so I have a feeling it's going to be a very packed stadium that only a college atmosphere can provide. It's going to be really neat to see. So any further thoughts, Jack?
Well, just want to mention with Army football, CBS Sports and Army actually signed a contract extension to extend their partnership through 2022. And they'll continue to cover Army football games through then. And the network also has the option to televise additional games through the Patriot League, as well as select Army lacrosse and basketball games. So you might see some Army basketball games on CBS Sports in the winter. And we'll continue to see our friend Ben Holden do a play-by-play.
Yeah, and CBS Sports Network does all the Army home games as well as the home games for Navy and for Air Force. And they do select basketball games, generally the Army-Navy basketball games, both in West Point and at Annapolis. And they came out and did a couple of lacrosse games this spring. And they'll cover some other events as well. So good to see. And of course, they have the contract also for the big game, the Army-Navy game, which, as they say, is going to be on the big CBS. And so we'll look forward to all that. So again, just want to say thank you to our sponsors, the Westchester Bank, branches all through Westchester County, and also all our friends here at Post 135 in White Plains. And also ask you to remember the American Legion National Emergency Fund, information on how the American Legion is helping veterans and communities in Houston and Florida. Just go to legion.org, and there's lots of information about contributing to that. So, from Post 135 in downtown White Plains, for John Chuhran and for Jack McGuirk, this is Ken Kraetzer for Sons of the American Legion Radio.